On the night before Tuesday, Ukraine's defense forces struck Russian fuel and lubricant depots, an electronic warfare station, and a UAV command post. This was reported by the General Staff. The strikes occurred near Koptieve, Makivka, Miranrada, in the vicinity of Suketska, and in the area of temporarily occupied Donetsk. The Special Operations Forces are releasing video footage of the successful actions of Ukrainian troops against enemy positions. Additionally, the armed forces of Ukraine have liberated almost the entire territory of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Only 3 small settlements remain to be secured and 2 more need to be cleared. This was stated in an interview with RBC Ukraine by the chief of the main operational directorate of the General Staff, Major General Oleksandr Komarenko. Overall, according to him, during the current counter-offensive operation in the Oleksandrivka direction, which is the border between Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia, Ukrainian paratroopers, together with adjacent units, have liberated the area. 400 square kilometers of territory, the Air Assault Forces Group showed TCH exclusive footage of one of the battles. At the border of Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia, using military equipment, the soldiers managed to clear another settlement and secure their position there. Its name is not being disclosed yet, since the operation in the Oleksandrivka direction is still ongoing. The analytical portal Deep State is also reporting on the work of the defense forces in this area. They state that Ukrainian defenders are clearing the junction of the 2 regions. The main force behind this is the Ukrainian paratroopers. In particular, intense fighting continues for the village of Berezov. Overall, there were 130 clashes recorded along the entire front line over the past day. These are the figures from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. 10 wounded, over 1,000 eliminated. Broken windows and shattered balconies are the aftermath of the nighttime drone attack on Dnipro. Among the injured is a child. 19 Shahids that the enemy directed at the city were shot down by the defenders from the sky. Ola Pavlovska will tell you more about the consequences of the massive attack.
Explosions and fires in the middle of the night. A bank building is on fire. And here is a mutilated apartment building. A few blocks away, trees saved homes from a direct hit.
We don't see it directly. A hit on the buildings themselves. There was a small fire, but according to the report, it was already extinguished even before the arrival of the state emergency service workers.
10 people were injured, including a 12-year-old boy. He has already been released home. Only 1 injured woman remains in the hospital. Her life is not in danger. The apartments are completely destroyed. The wind blows through Mrs. Tetiana's home. The furniture is broken.
The storage room used to be far away. The storage room was torn out, and here everything was ripped out along with it. You see, even the handles, the blast wave was that strong. And look, this is shrapnel, it flew in. Just like that, as if Grandma wished for it.
She miraculously wasn't hurt at all.
She must have been born under a lucky star.
The explosion blew off the radiators and flooded the apartment. Only a blanket saved Mrs. Larisa from the shrapnel.
I was lying down sleeping and I heard the Shahed approaching. It was clear it was coming for the house. When the glass started shattering, I covered myself with clothes. Sparks were flying. The explosion ripped out the radiators in the kitchen and the apartment.
The exact time of the attack. She knows it for sure.
So what time was it? That was me. See everyone? When it hit, they fell, the radiator, everything fell out. 11.
During the attack, many people were simply sleeping and didn't have time to hide.
I was sitting at home. I was shaking so much that I couldn't do anything at all. I only heard the explosion. I did manage, though, to at least jump out of bed. Thank God I survived.
The windows, everything was completely destroyed. The balconies were blown out. Everything there is gone. There's nothing left alive there. What can I say? If I had been sleeping in bed, the glass would have fallen right out of the frame onto the bed. Can you imagine that? Is it fear or not? I still can't get over it. I had just gone to the bathroom.
I was sleeping. When the explosion happened, I woke up immediately, and then I grabbed the dogs and went to the bathroom. We sat in the bathroom, and then I ran with the dogs to the window. You can never get used to this.
1,000 window panes were blown out. More than 10 apartment buildings were damaged, as well as kindergartens and the gymnasium. The Teachers together with parents are cleaning up the destroyed classrooms so that classes can resume.
It's the third grade. Little kids study here. We did our best for the children. It was all set up.
About 100 utility workers are working at the sites of the strikes. They are trying to cover the broken windows before nightfall, when the temperature will drop.
At least 4 people were killed in Sloviansk, Donetsk region, and 20 were wounded, including 2 children. In the morning, the occupiers dropped 3 guided aerial bombs on the city center, which is densely populated with residential buildings. One hit an apartment building, while the other 2 fell near residential buildings. Rescue and search operations are ongoing, as there may still be people trapped under the rubble. 9 people were wounded in the Nikopol district of Dnipropetrovsk region. The enemy struck a minibus in Marhanets with an FPV drone. 2 adults and a 4-year-old girl were injured. Meanwhile, in Nikopol, 5 police officers and a civilian employee were wounded. First, the occupiers hit a police car with an FPV drone and then targeted the administrative building with drones. The 43-year-old police officer who was driving is in serious condition. 2 police vehicles were destroyed, and the rescue team's vehicle that arrived to help was also damaged. Kherson has also been under fire since the morning. In the suburbs, the occupiers killed an elderly woman. 2 more local residents sustained shrapnel wounds and blast injuries. Later, the Russians struck the city center with drones, causing concussions and injuries. 2 women and a man were taken to the hospital. Fires broke out. Cars and residential buildings were burning. The Russians also struck the Hlukiv community with glide bombs. This is in the Sumy region. The death of 1 person has already been confirmed. There are also injured, and their number is still being determined. And in the Okterka district, a FPV drone hit a car, injuring a pensioner inside. 10 people were injured in Kharkiv, including 2 children. Residential areas in 3 districts of the city came under attack from Russian drones. 5 apartment buildings were damaged, as well as private homes, vehicles, and power lines. Yulia Boyko visited the sites of the strikes.
Another sleepless night for Kharkiv. Russian drones attacked the city's residential neighborhoods. 10 people were injured overnight, including 2 16-year-old girls. The main strike hit the Kolodno-Hirsky district of the city. In the middle of the night, Russian drones struck directly into the yards of private houses. The blast wave and shrapnel shattered walls, roofs, and fences. Ms. Valentina is one of those whose house ended up at the epicenter. The woman says they survived by a miracle because they managed to react in time.
There was a humming sound and then an explosion. That's what I remember. There was a flash and then the glass flew everywhere. The entire roof, all of the windows and the wooden fence were completely and utterly destroyed. The ceiling too. Everything collapsed inside the house. The house cracked. Yes, thank God we're alive, we made it.
The second Shahed hit in the same district. Among the damaged houses is Mr. Hrehory's home, which he painted with characters from Taras Shevchenko's works almost 40 years ago. He says this is already the 3rd time. The enemy is targeting his Taras house?
So he jumped out, not knowing what to do. Thank God this one could have been worse. I had a good artist, Tsar. They killed their city. This memory remained with him. Serega Pushchenko. There is no talented person. He normalized everything, and now they're finishing it off. And
The night before, the occupiers attacked the industrial district of the city. A Shahed drone hit the ground near apartment buildings. As a result of the explosion, cars caught fire and windows were blown out in the surrounding buildings.
Everyone is in shock. 2 cars, 2 damaged vehicles. I want to say that 5 residential buildings, these are multi-story apartment buildings, were damaged. The windows were blown out. In addition, the power grid was damaged.
Utility workers have been working at all locations since early morning. They are sealing the building perimeters and repairing damaged networks to restore electricity to people as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, 5 wounded people remain in the city's hospitals. After the ballistic strike on Kharkiv on Saturday, which claimed the lives of at least 10 people, 2 of them children. Another 16 city residents were injured. For the 4th day, doctors have been fighting for the life of an 11-year-old boy without giving any prognosis. The condition of the other child, a 6-year-old boy, is stable.
Germany has collected 30 Patriot missiles for Ukraine. This was reported by the publication Spiegel. Kiev is supposed to receive the interceptor missiles. In the past few weeks, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius managed to gather reinforcements for Ukraine's air defense. This was done among European partners and allies. Together with the German contribution and from Bundeswehr reserves, this amounts to approximately 35 units. This initiative was discussed back at the Munich Security Conference. At that time, Boris Pistorius proposed that Germany would provide 5 Patriot missiles to replenish Ukraine's stockpiles if other partners could find another 30. In addition, Berlin will supply Ukraine with other systems and weapons, including portable anti-aircraft missile systems, manpads, air-to-air missiles, and guided missiles for Iris-T launchers. And what about the missiles? As for the Patriot missiles, there are certain concerns because they could become scarce. After all, in the first days of the conflict in the Middle East, Israel and its allies used about 800 missiles against Iran. Ukraine, over the entire course of the war, has received only 600. The OLX tax has been rejected again. The Verkhovna Rada has failed the government bill, which was part of the commitments to. Only 168 MPs supported the bill on international automatic exchange of information about income received through digital platforms, which was part of the commitments to the International Monetary Fund and provided for the taxation of income earned via online marketplaces. In particular, these are platforms such as Bolt, Booking, Glovo, or OLX. The explanations from the bill's initiators that these changes are being requested by the businesses themselves and that participants in transactions on these platforms would receive preferential tax treatment did not have an effect. After all, as opponents of the government's project are convinced, it is precisely this bill. Before the second reading, the government planned to introduce amendments regarding all other IMF requirements. In particular, to supplement it by abolishing the exemption for parcels up to 150 euros. Personal income tax for sole proprietors and the extension of the 5% military levy for the period after martial law ends. The changes regarding taxes will now be combined into a single bill, which may be adopted by the end of March. The introduction of personal income tax for sole proprietors may be postponed until 2028 or until Ukraine joins the European Union. Passing this law was one of the conditions of the new IMF program for Ukraine, amounting to over $8 billion. Scandals involving the hospitallers. The medical battalion, which was previously accused of non-transparent use of collected funds, promises to publish a full financial report. For the previous year, by May 1st, the paramedics announced this at a press briefing. It all started a few days ago. The battalion announced a fundraiser for equipment, which had 2 accounts for money, one belonging to the foundation and the other a personal account of the commander, Jana Zinkiewicz. One of the social media users publicly requested financial reports from the foundation regarding the donations spent. While waiting for a response, a discussion began. Some accused the foundation of lacking transparency. They emphasized the need for financial reports regarding the use of the money. Others, on the contrary, defended the hospitallers and reminded everyone that this is a medical unit that, over 12 years of war, has saved thousands of wounded. This story is also being called one that could undermine the reputation of the volunteer movement. The hospitallers explained that they did not report on part of the money spent due to high operational workload and the complex logistics of their work. Moreover, they have information about expenditures that, if disclosed, could pose a threat to the battalion. According to Jana Zinkiewicz, last year their foundation received more than 74 million hryvnias, 51,000 euros, and $906,000 in charitable donations. And after the scandal broke out, the commander says the number of donations from Ukrainians to the medical battalion actually increased.
If we talk about the public discussion as a whole, and what all the investigators on Twitter have concluded regarding the alleged mass concealment of some kind of income, then the question arises, has any of us acquired any property, maybe a villa, maybe something else, maybe some Maseratis? How should I put it? In other words, absolutely logical questions arise, and if there is something to accuse us of, then please contact law enforcement agencies. Not a single original document in an unblurred form, or even with sensitive data of our contractors and suppliers blurred out, will be made publicly available.
The Fidesz party in Hungary will launch a disinformation campaign ahead of the elections. This was reported by the leader of the Hungarian opposition party, Tisza, Peter Magyar, on Facebook. Allegedly, the party of the current Prime Minister Orban will cooperate with Russian political strategists operating out of the Russian embassy in Budapest. The campaign will be focused on social networks, primarily on TikTok. According to him, Fidesz has prepared, among other things, 14 discrediting video clips created by artificial intelligence about the candidate from TIS and members of his family. These will be spread by fake profiles. Previously, in their election campaign, Orban and his party have already used, for example, photos of the Ukrainian authorities. In particular, they put up billboards in the country calling not to accept Ukraine into the EU. By the way, the Hungarian parliament adopted a corresponding resolution against supporting Ukraine's accession to the EU. The document also includes a call not to send money for further arming the Ukrainian military. With this vote, Budapest only reinforced its refusal to support the 90 billion euros loan. At the same time, the government in Budapest adopted a decree on the confiscation of currency and valuables from armored cash-in-transit vehicles. By doing this, they are trying to create a legal basis for their illegal actions. Let me remind you, this concerns the money and gold that the Hungarians seized last week from armored cash-in-transit vehicles transporting them from Austria to Ukraine. At that time, 7 employees of Oshad Bank were also detained, and although they were only listed as witnesses, the Ukrainians had their eyes covered, were handcuffed, and were denied assistance. So how should Ukraine act when, in order to win elections, Orban and his associates resort to robbery, blackmail, and even Russian political strategists? And what real levers of influence over Budapest does Kiev currently have? Brussels. Court, Donald Trump, pressure on Hungarian-owned businesses in Ukraine, or something else. Write everything you think in the comments, and of course like and subscribe to the channel, and I will continue with the TSN broadcast. Last year they refused, but now they're interested. The United States of America once refused to make a deal regarding Ukrainian technologies against Iranian drones. Axios notes that now American officials admit that this refusal turned out to be one of the biggest tactical mistakes in the war against Iran. Almost 7 months ago, Ukrainian officials offered the U.S. a battle-tested technology, including during a closed meeting between President Zelensky and Trump. The Ukrainians even made, during the presentation, they showed a map of the Middle East and warned that Iran was improving its drones. The presentation also put forward the idea of creating combat drone centers in Turkey, Jordan, and the Gulf states, where American bases are located, to counter threats from Iran and its allies. However, despite apparent interest, the idea never moved from concept to real action. And just last Thursday, the United States officially made a request to Volodymyr Zelensky for assistance in combating drones. After all, the relatively inexpensive Iranian Shaheds have caused significant damage to the states. Shooting them down cost the U.S. and its allies millions, and the drones themselves are linked to the deaths of 7 American servicemen. Meanwhile, the United States is lifting sanctions on oil to stabilize its prices, and Donald Trump suggested that perhaps he said that there would be no need to reimpose the restrictions because supposedly peace would reign everywhere in the world. He said this after a phone conversation with the Russian dictator Putin, which he described verbatim as very good. The president did not specify which countries would have sanctions lifted, but sources at Reuters claim that Russia is among them. Last week, the U.S. already partially eased sanctions against Russian oil, allowing India to purchase from Russian tankers at sea. Thank you. Also, as Trump said, he and Putin discussed the issue of the war in Ukraine. The U.S. president once again complained about the animosity between Putin and Zelensky, but he also assessed this part of the conversation positively. TSN's own correspondent in the United States, Olha Koshelenko, has more details.
The President of the United States came out for a press conference against the backdrop of alarming news, when oil prices were volatile and no one understood the timeline for ending the war in Iran, to announce his phenomenal success. Donald Trump says everything is ahead of schedule, and even better than he had hoped. The only thing unclear is when it will end. Trump assured that it would be soon. The stated objectives of the operation are constantly changing as well. Now he says he wants to make sure Iran can never return to producing nuclear weapons. Trump is dissatisfied with the newly appointed spiritual leader Mojtaba Khamenei, but refused to say whether he is now also an American target. But as for whom he is satisfied with, it's the Russian leader Putin. The day before, he spoke with him by phone. Earlier, Trump called journalists questions about what Russia is supplying to Iran senseless. Intelligence for carrying out strikes on American targets in the region. Although his special representative Steve Witkoff did not directly confirm this, he noted that Putin was asked for more than that. Not to do it. Putin is impressed by his actions in Iran and wants to be helpful, Trump concluded from his conversation with him.
We obviously talked about the Middle East, and he wants to be helpful. I said that you could be more helpful if you ended the war between Ukraine and Russia. That would be a greater help. But we had a very good conversation, and he wants to be very constructive.
Trump called the spike in oil prices expected, and it actually was, lower than he anticipated. And he said that they will stabilize soon. The US is offering tankers insurance against political risks if needed. Escort in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, the United States has already lifted a number of sanctions on oil, including Russian oil, to lower prices. And they plan to lift more. And perhaps the restrictions might not even have to be reinstated, the US leader suggested.
We are lifting some oil-related sanctions to bring prices down. We have sanctions against certain countries, and we are going to lift them until the situation is resolved. And then, who knows, maybe we won't even have to impose them again. There will be peace everywhere.
President Trump and members of his cabinet met over the weekend with the families of American soldiers who died in the Middle East. The only thing, according to Trump, that the families of the fallen asked of him was, and I quote, to finish it. From Washington, United States, Olha Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko,